So I want you to close your eyes for a second. Well, assuming you aren't driving, obviously.
Right, yeah, please keep your eyes on the road if you're behind the wheel.
Exactly. But if you can, just imagine yourself, completely off the grid. You've hiked way past the day trippers with their loud Bluetooth speakers.
Oh, I know the type.
Yeah. You've gone miles past the designated gravel-paved campsites. You are now deep into an ancient, untouched national forest.
Like really deep.
I'm talking 30, maybe 40 miles deep into the wilderness, the kind of deep where the canopy is so incredibly thick that the sunlight only manages to hit the forest floor in these sharp, isolated little dusty beams.
It's a very specific kind of isolation.
It totally is. And the silence out there is absolute. It's that heavy ringing silence that actually starts to, hurt your eardrums after a few hours because your brain is just desperately searching for an acoustic bounce.
Your ears are practically straining for any sound.
Right. So you step into this small clearing and you're expecting to see, I don't know, a foraging deer or maybe the decaying roots of some old fallen redwood. But instead, sitting right there in the middle of the moss and the ferns is a staircase.
Just an isolated set of steps existing exactly where it shouldn't.
Perfectly constructed. There are no walls attached to the sides. There's no crumbling foundation of an old homesteader's cabin nearby. No ceiling above it.
Wow.
It is literally just a pristine staircase leading absolutely nowhere, suspended right there in the natural landscape. And to make the image even more surreal, sitting perfectly straight at the bottom step like it's waiting for a guest, is a pristine welcome mat.
See, that is an image that just immediately short-circuits human logic.
It really does.
It feels deeply fundamentally wrong on a neurological level. And I want to explicitly welcome you, the listener, as the third mind in our conversation today.
Glad to have you with us.
Because whether you are an avid hiker who spends every single weekend navigating backcountry trails, or you're a city dweller whose primary interaction with nature is just a manicured local park, this specific topic taps into something remarkably universal.
Oh, absolutely.
It preys on our primal fear of finding the profoundly familiar in a place where it absolutely, unequivocally does not belong.
Yeah, and our mission today for this deep dive is highly specific. We are going to completely unpack this bizarre, terrifying internet phenomenon that is known as the stairs in the woods.
It's such a wild rabbit hole.
It really is. And for anyone who is coming into this completely blind, if you're new to this whole thing, we are going to build this from the ground up for you.
We're covering all the bases.
We're going to explain exactly what this anomaly is, and we're going to do that by analyzing the raw, visceral accounts of the forest rangers and the search and rescue officers who actually claim to have physically stood at the base of these steps.
Which is the most fascinating part.
Ultimately, our goal here is to separate the tangible historical facts from the digital fiction.
And the stack of sources we have to get through today is just staggering in its variety.
So much material.
We'll be analyzing chilling first-hand operational accounts from park rangers, deconstructing investigations from YouTube documentarians like Nick Crowley, and examining the very real archaeology of ancient historical ruins. We'll even dive into the complex mathematics of 3D optical illusions.
Which is going to be a trip. So let's start at ground zero and really define the anatomy of this anomaly. For the newcomer, what exactly is the stairs in the woods phenomenon?
Right, we need to set the stage.
Because this didn't start as some centuries-old folktale passed down around campfires, did it? It has a very specific modern origin point.
Yeah, exactly. To trace the modern inception of this legend, we have to look at a highly specific digital footprint. August 25th, 2015.
Okay, so not that long ago.
It's not at all. On the platform Reddit, a user utilizing the handle Search and Rescue Woods published a pretty lengthy post. This individual claimed to be a search and rescue or SAR officer working under the jurisdiction of the U.S. Forest Service.
Right.
And they began chronicling these varied, highly detailed, and honestly often terrifying stories from their deployments deep in the American wilderness.
But there was one detail that really caught on, right?
Oh, yeah. The specific detail that caught the collective imagination of the internet, the thing that essentially broke the algorithm, was their incredibly casual mention of the stairs.
I think it was the framing that made it so effective.
Exactly.
It wasn't presented as the grand climax of some big ghost story. It was presented as a bureaucratic workplace annoyance.
Like a broken printer in the office.
Exactly. The author wrote that finding these impossible stairs is essentially an unspoken routine hazard of the job. They claim that on almost every deployment where a search grid takes them 30 or 40 miles deep into the unmapped wilderness, at some point they will just stumble upon a fully intact staircase in the middle of the woods.
And the bureaucratic protocol surrounding them, at least according to this initial narrative, is just fascinating.
What were the rules?
So the original poster described how the rules of the stairs are strictly enforced by the veteran rangers. When this new recruit first encountered a set and asked their supervisor about it, the veterans delivered a very emphatic mandate.
Basically telling him to mind his own business.
Pretty much.
Huh?
They told him, do not worry about it. It is a normal occurrence. Never approach them, and absolutely do not talk about them on the radio.
Wow.
The protocol was to act as if a carpeted staircase in a virgin pine forest was as natural as a rock formation.
Which completely defies every instinct of human curiosity. I mean, I would want to go look at it.
Anyone would.
And the physical descriptions of these stairs are completely decentralized, which adds a whole other layer of complexity. The original poster described finding stairs that looked like they were literally cut out of a modern suburban split-level home and just dropped into the dirt.
Right, with the carpet and everything.
Yeah. But as the post went viral and other supposed rangers began flooding the comments with their own encounters, the architecture became wildly inconsistent.
That architectural variety is actually a crucial data point in understanding the phenomenon.
So.
Well, some accounts describe modern stairs with flawless vacuum carpeting, like you mentioned, but others detailed ancient, crumbling stone steps.
Like ruins.
Exactly. A user going by the name Case9 documented a staircase constructed of loose cobble and moist earth, resembling archaic masonry, completely choked by thick foliage.
Oh, that's creepy.
We have reports of brutalist concrete embedded with large river pebbles and even ornate wrought iron spiral staircases.
So they can look like anything.
Yes, but the single unifying characteristic, the absolute golden rule of this phenomenon, is that the stairs are always completely detached from any broader structure.
See, I always visualize it like a catastrophic rendering error in a video game.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
You know when you're playing a massive open world game and the physics engine just glitches out? The developers accidentally drop a 3D asset from a suburban neighborhood level into the deep forest level.
And it just sits there.
Right. It is rendering perfectly, the textures are sharp, but it is entirely out of context. But let's apply some critical thinking here for a second.
Okay, let's do it.
If we assume for a moment that this phenomenon has any root in reality, why stairs? Why not a random front door standing upright in a clearing? Why not a brick chimney or a mailbox? Why does this anomaly consistently manifest as a staircase?
Let's actually take that video game glitch analogy a bit further because it perfectly maps onto human neurology.
Really?
Well, our brains are essentially running predictive rendering software all the time. We have evolutionary heuristics for the woods, right? Trees, dirt, rocks, water.
The basics, yeah.
When our brain encounters a locked door or a mailbox in the woods, it can categorize them as discarded trash or prank. But stairs are inherently transitional.
They lead somewhere.
Exactly. They are not just an object. They are a physical invitation to move from one plane of elevation to another. They imply a specific destination. They imply an up.
Oh, I see.
Placing an invitation to an unseen destination in the middle of a chaotic, untamed wilderness creates profound cognitive dissonance. The brain just cannot resolve the geometry of an ascent that leads to empty air.
That makes so much sense. And that cognitive failure isn't just mental, is it? The physical and physiological reactions reported by the people who actually breach that perimeter and get close to these structures are violently intense.
They really are. The symptomatology is remarkably consistent across different geographic locations.
What happens to them?
When individuals approach within a few yards of the bottom step, they report sudden, debilitating dizziness.
Like vertigo.
Yeah, severe vertigo. And they experience a crushing, overwhelming feeling of dread. We aren't talking about the standard unease of being in a dark forest here.
Right, not just being spooked by a snapping twig.
No, this is described as a profound, localized sense of being entirely unwelcome. It's a physiological rejection, almost as if the atmospheric pressure of the environment is physically trying to crush them out of the space.
And supposedly, the environment rejects the stairs, too.
Yes, that's a big part of it.
A recurring, highly unsettling detail in these accounts is the ecological dead zone surrounding the structures. Like, the moss and grass won't grow within a 5-foot radius of the bottom steps.
It's just barren dirt.
Exactly. The wildlife, the birds, the foraging rodents, even the insects, they seem to actively avoid the immediate perimeter. It is essentially an acoustic and biological vacuum. It's fascinating. And while that 2015 Reddit post served as the catalyst for the modern internet frenzy, tracing the lore back reveals that stories of outdoorsmen encountering these impossible structures actually predate the digital age by decades.
Wow, really? So it's not just a recent thing?
Not at all. And the oral history from the people who actually decided to ignore the warnings and climb those steps reveals a horrifying physical toll.
We need to leave the theoretical and get into the tree line. Our core mission here is to present the visceral, first-hand accounts of the people who have stood at the bottom of these steps.
Let's get into the stories.
Because reading a spooky forum post is one thing, but dissecting a story passed down from a veteran forest ranger whose entire worldview was shattered is another.
Absolutely. We should begin with a highly specific operational environment, the dense, soggy swamplands of Michigan.
Okay, set the scene for us.
This account originates from a woman named Megan, whose uncle served as a seasoned forest ranger in that region. And to understand the gravity of this uncle's reaction, we really have to establish his baseline psychology. He wasn't easily scared, I assume.
Not even close. This was a man whose daily reality involved the brutal indifference of nature. He had managed campsites where exotic pets escaped, he had pulled drowning hikers out of freezing rapids, and he had handled the tragic, agonizing recoveries of children who succumbed to hypothermia.
Oh man, that's heavy.
It is. He was entirely unflappable. He viewed the horrors of the woods just as structural elements of his office.
He is the quintessential stoic outdoorsman, a guy whose heart rate probably doesn't even spike when a black bear walks into his camp.
Exactly. So the story goes that he takes his niece, Megan, and nephews out for a casual afternoon walk in his grandparents' privately owned woods.
Just a family stroll.
Yeah. They navigate out to a familiar swampy depression where they routinely hunt for wild mushrooms. The terrain is, sucking mud and dense brush.
Typical swamp.
Right. And suddenly, right in the middle of this saturated bog, they stop dead. Because protruding directly out of the sinking mud is a perfectly built staircase.
Oh, wow. In the middle of the mud.
Yes. The visual contrast Megan describes is just jarring. It appeared as though an entire residential house had been constructed in the swamp, and the semi-liquid earth had simply swallowed the structure whole over time, leaving only the central staircase jutting out into the air.
That is such a vivid image, and there was something weird about how clean it was, right?
Extremely weird. The anomaly wasn't just structural, it was environmental. At the top landing of this staircase sat a welcome mat. Both the mat and the beige carpet covering the steps were impeccably clean.
Wait, beige carpet in a swamp?
Yes. They were completely unsoiled by the surrounding mud, the high humidity, or the decaying leaves falling from the canopy above.
That's impossible. So Megan looks up at her uncle, right? She probably expects him to apply his usual gruff logic. She expects him to say it's illegal dumping or some bizarre local art project, and maybe just laugh it off.
That would be his normal reaction.
But instead, she looks up and sees this unshakable veteran ranger physically trembling. His skin is pale. He is frantically scanning the surrounding tree line as if he is anticipating a tactical ambush. And without explaining anything, he grabs the kids by their coats, turns them around, and practically carries them out of the swamp, moving at a dead sprint.
That reaction says everything.
Right.
Upon reaching the safety of their property line, he immediately implements the rules. He forbids them from ever speaking of what they saw, and strictly mandates that they never venture out of sight of the main house without his armed presence.
That is intense.
The psychology of that reaction is profound. The stairs didn't just scare him, they represented a threat so absolute that it overrode his lifetime of wilderness training.
And there's a follow-up to this story, too. Years later, Megan returns to the property as an adult.
She goes back.
She brings her brother, and crucially, they bring a 200-pound mastiff. A dog specifically bred for protection and threat detection.
A serious dog.
Yeah. They use their memory of the topography to navigate back to the exact coordinates in the swamp.
And what do they find?
The stairs are gone. There is no sunken house, there's no rotting wood, no rusted nails, no pristine welcome mat. It is just an empty clearing filled with a large bloom of mushrooms.
Okay, but what about the dog?
This is the crazy part. This massive, highly aggressive mastiff plants its feet and begins growling viciously at the empty air directly above the mushrooms.
Oh, that's shocking.
The dog is reacting to an invisible, localized threat where the stairs used to reside. They evacuated the area immediately and never went back.
Yeah, it introduces a critical mechanism we really must evaluate. the ephemeral geography of these structures.
What do you mean by that?
They do not behave like static physical objects.
Yeah.
They seem to exist in a state of geographical flux, anchoring to a location temporarily before displacing.
Like they move around.
Exactly. And if we shift our focus from the cold swamps of Michigan to the dense, oppressive, high canopy jungles of the Philippines, we encounter an account that takes this spatial anomaly and injects a terrifying temporal distortion.
Oh, the legend of Ranger Torkic. Think about you, the listener, right now, going about your day. We all have a rigid understanding of how time passes. This story completely fractures that understanding.
Torkic's account is a cornerstone of localized ranger lore in the region. He was a highly experienced operative tasked with a standard grid patrol to locate missing backpackers.
Okay, standard mission.
Right. Navigating the deep jungle canopy, where visibility is often reduced to just a few feet, he stumbles upon a clearing containing not one, but two distinct sets of stairs.
Two of them.
Yeah, the architecture is split. One set is constructed of carved, ornate stone with intricate decorative etchings, while the other appears to be crudely assembled from natural, unworked stones sourced from the immediate riverbed.
And Torkic, unlike our Michigan Ranger, does not retreat. He applies tactical logic. He is in a dense jungle, he needs to see above the brush to locate the missing hikers, and he has a sturdy, elevated platform right in front of him.
Makes sense operationally.
So he decides to use the stairs for a vantage point. But as he approaches the base, he is confronted by a vicious, emaciated stray dog fiercely guarding the bottom step.
Always the dogs.
Yeah, right. Not wanting to discharge his weapon or risk rabies, he quickly bypasses the dog, hurries up the steps, reaches the top landing, does a quick 360-degree visual sweep, sees nothing but canopy, and immediately heads back down to return to his base camp.
Just a few minutes of action.
Exactly. From his neurological perspective, the sequence of events was unbroken. The climb, the observation, and the descent felt like a continuous flow of a few minutes. He hiked back to his operational base, believing he had been in the jungle for perhaps 4 or 5 hours total.
But that wasn't the case.
No. Upon returning to civilization, he wasn't met with a debriefing. He was met with absolute shock and immediate termination of his employment, because Ranger Torkic hadn't been on patrol for 5 hours. According to the calendar, his family, and the government, he had been missing for 5 entire years.
5 years. That is just, it's almost incomprehensible.
He steps up an elevation of maybe 10 feet, takes a look around, steps back down, and half a decade of human history has evaporated. His family mourned him. His job replaced him. It is the ultimate manifestation of the missing time phenomenon.
The mechanics of this are staggering if we treat it as a theoretical model. The stairs in this narrative didn't merely elevate his physical body, they seem to have forcefully extracted his consciousness from the chronological flow of our reality.
Like a time machine, almost.
Sort of. It suggests a localized gravitational or temporal anomaly, where the passage of time at the top of the stairs operates on a fundamentally different mathematical ratio than the ground below.
Which provides the perfect runway to examine the most mechanically bizarre account in our entire source stack, the 1940s CDC Roswell incident.
Ah, yes. It is an account that reads like deeply classified archival fiction.
Break it down for us.
Following the infamous, highly publicized Roswell incident in the late 1940s, local ranchers in the surrounding New Mexico and Texas areas reported a massive, inexplicable spike in animal mutilations.
The classic cattle mutilation stories.
Exactly. We are talking about livestock found surgically drained of blood with laser-precise incisions. According to the lore, the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, was purportedly deployed to the deep wilderness to investigate whether a novel biological pathogen was responsible for these anomalies.
Okay, hold on, stop right there. I have to aggressively push back on this.
Let's hear it.
The CDC. In the late 1940s, the agency was literally founded in 1946 in Atlanta, primarily to spray for malaria mosquitoes in the American South. Why on earth would an infectious disease agency be dispatched to the deep deserts of New Mexico to investigate surgical cow mutilations?
It sounds absurd.
It sounds like a discarded script for an alien conspiracy movie, not a bureaucratic reality. We need to be highly critical of this source here.
And that exact skepticism is the necessary lens for this deep dive. When you trace the genealogy of this specific account through the forums, the CDC label is likely a retroactive misattribution by civilians who just don't understand government acronyms.
Okay, so who was it?
It was far more likely a specialized branch of the Atomic Energy Commission or early elements of the Department of Defense, given the proximity to the White Sands Missile Range and the Trinity Nuclear Test Site.
That makes way more sense.
Right. But the core of the narrative, highly trained government scientists encountering the impossible, remains consistent.
Okay, so assuming it was a military science division, during this grueling 6-month deployment, the investigators start encountering these isolated stairs. But unlike the silent stairs in Michigan, these structures are aggressively active.
Very active.
The scientists document that the staircases are emitting a distinct, measurable frequency, a low decibel hum that they can pick up on their equipment. Being scientists, they attempt to run a diagnostic. They establish an observation camp exactly 30 meters away to monitor the structure overnight.
And this is where the Newtonian physics of the phenomenon completely collapse.
What happens?
When the researchers emerge from their tents at dawn, the stairs have moved.
Just move.
Moved. They haven't been dragged through the dirt. There are no tracks. They have seemingly teleported. And in the precise geometric footprint where the stairs rested the previous day, the earth is scorched.
Wow.
There is a dark, perfectly square black burn mark branded into the soil.
And it gets crazier. 2 days later, the stairs materialize again, now 50 meters away. The scientists pivot from observation to physical sampling.
They want to know what it's made of.
Right. They take heavy tools, chisels, saws, axes, and attempt to extract a core sample of the wood for laboratory analysis, but they physically can't dent it.
It won't break.
The material, which visually registers as standard timber, possesses a tensile strength harder than industrial steel. It cannot be chipped, it cannot be sawed, and it cannot be burned. 6 days after this attempted extraction, the stairs vanish from the grid completely.
If we evaluate the mechanics of the burnt ground, we are likely looking at descriptions of localized radiation scarring or extreme thermal displacement.
What does that mean exactly?
Well, when matter instantly transits from one coordinate to another without crossing the intervening space like teleportation, the displaced atmosphere has to release massive amounts of energy, usually as heat.
Hence the burn marks.
Exactly. And the indestructibility of the wood suggests a material that is either entirely synthetic or molecularly dense in a way the terrestrial body just cannot replicate.
But regardless of whether the stairs are made of impossible alien timber or rotten Michigan swampwood, the outcome for the people who actually touch them is catastrophic. We really have to look at the casualty reports.
The narrative absolutely shifts from eerie environmental anomalies to violent, targeted trauma.
Tell me about Axel and Isaac.
Consider the documented case of Axel and Isaac. They are 2 university students executing a multi-day hike deep in the remote, sparsely populated Scandinavian woods of Sweden. They are miles from the nearest logging road when they breach a clearing and find a staircase.
And how do they react?
Axel, mirroring the biological instincts of our Michigan Ranger, is instantly hit with a wave of severe cortisol and dread. His body tells him to flee. But Isaac's curiosity overrides his survival instinct. He breaks the unwritten rule and begins to climb.
Oh no.
The moment Isaac's boot hits the top landing, the absolute silence of the forest is shattered by a blood-curdling, inhuman shriek.
Like a monster.
It isn't an animal. It's described as an acoustic weapon. It is so loud and so fundamentally terrifying that both men bypass communication entirely and instantly break into a blind, panic-driven sprint through the dense timber. They run until their lungs are burning.
Pure flight response.
After navigating blindly through the brush for what feels like an hour, they finally collapse against a tree to recover oxygen. Axel is bent over, staring at the dirt, when he feels a distinct physical pressure on his shoulder.
Wait, like a hand?
Yes, it is the undeniable sensation of a freezing cold, human-sized hand gripping his jacket. He violently spins around, expecting to see Isaac trying to stabilize him.
But it's not him.
No. Isaac is standing completely still, over 30 feet away. There is absolutely no one behind Axel. The physical grip is real, but the entity applying the pressure is completely invisible.
So the stairs essentially marked him, like tagging a target. And the physical violence escalates drastically in other accounts.
It gets worse.
Much worse. Back in the original Reddit threads, another SAR operative details a devastating incident involving a colleague. This ranger discovers a set of stairs, lets his curiosity win, and climbs to the top.
Okay.
While balancing on the top step, he extends his arm outward to lean against a nearby tree branch. The exact microsecond his arm crosses the invisible vertical threshold of the stairs perimeter, he experiences an agonizing, blinding pain.
What happened?
He looks down to find that his hand has been completely, cleanly severed from his wrist.
Oh my God. Just gone.
Gone. He applies a tourniquet, survives the hike out, but despite an exhaustive grid search by his team, the severed hand is never located in the brush.
The pathology of the amputation is described as surgical. No tearing, no jagged bone, just a perfect anatomical slice.
Like a laser.
Right. And we see a similar biological catastrophic failure in another prominent account. A ranger is actively observing a civilian woman who has wandered off the marked trail. She encounters a set of stone steps. Before the ranger can intervene, she begins her ascent.
What happens to her?
Halfway up the structure, she suddenly clutches her head, complains of an explosive headache, collapses against the stone, and dies before she hits the ground.
Just drops dead.
The subsequent medical examiner's autopsy reveals she suffered a massive, localized, and instantly fatal brain aneurysm the exact moment she ascended the elevation.
I need to understand the mechanism here. We have time dilation, we have teleportation leaving radiation burns, we have invisible phantom hands applying physical pressure, surgical amputation, and instant vascular death. How do these stairs function? Why do they act like interdimensional bear traps?
If we synthesize these varied trauma accounts, the architecture of the threat becomes pretty clear.
Walk me through it.
The stairs do not function as a biological predator hunting for calories. They function precisely like an exposed high-voltage industrial transformer sitting in a grassy field.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Right. If you maintain a safe distance, you might feel a static charge in the air, a hum, a sense of deep unease. But if you physically bridge the circuit, if you climb the stairs and interact with the invisible energy field, you are subjected to forces that the human anatomy is fundamentally incapable of processing. You are stepping into an environmental hazard that simply does not obey terrestrial physics.
But here's the bridge we need to cross. For you, the skeptical listener sitting at home, it is incredibly difficult to fathom how a rational, highly trained, government-employed search and rescue officer could look at a staircase in the dirt and genuinely believe it is an interdimensional booby trap.
Yeah, it takes a lot to get there.
It does. To understand their mindset, we have to zoom out drastically. We have to examine the broader context of ranger trauma. We have to look at why the woods already feel profoundly alien and hostile to the people who map them.
This contextual shift is absolutely vital. The average civilian views the wilderness as a recreational park, a place for hiking boots and granola bars.
Exactly.
But the deep woods are an untamed, highly lethal frontier. To ground this in hard statistical reality, the National Crime Information Center estimates that roughly 600,000 to 750,000 missing person cases are reported annually in the United States alone.
That is a staggering number.
It is. Now, while the vast majority are runaways or custody disputes resolved in urban environments, a terrifying subset of that data represents people who step off a trail in a national park and simply vanish into the topography, leaving zero forensic trace.
When your entire career revolves around walking shoulder to shoulder in a grid, staring at the dirt for 12 hours a day looking for a footprint, and finding absolutely nothing, your worldview starts to fracture.
That has to take a toll.
You are going to see things that break your understanding of reality. Let's look at the account of Ranger Arthur. We get this story secondhand from a bartender whose brother-in-law, Arthur, works as a local county ranger. One Tuesday night, Arthur walks into the bar looking like a man who has just witnessed a homicide.
Oh, man.
He drops a $100 bill on the wood, demands an entire bottle of whiskey, and drinks in absolute traumatized silence.
So what happened out there?
Well, the bartender pieces together the context from the other rangers on the detail. They had been executing a massive grid search for a missing child who had wandered away from a campground, and Arthur was the operative who found him.
Okay, but finding the child should be a relief, right?
Normally, yes.
Yeah.
But the forensic geometry of the discovery is what completely broke Arthur's psychological resilience. When the whiskey finally loosens his jaw, Arthur starts muttering the same phrase over and over. How was he there? The physics don't work. He couldn't be there.
Why? What did he mean?
He explains that he didn't find the boy by looking at the ground. He found him because blood was raining down on his uniform from the canopy. The child was deceased, heavily mutilated, missing large anatomical sections, but the detail that destroys the logic. The boy's body was lodged securely in the branches of a massive ancient tree 50 feet straight up in the air.
50 feet.
Arthur stares at the bartender with the terrifying clarity of a man whose reality has collapsed and says, "Something put him up there."
Let's analyze the mechanical impossibility of that scene. A small, uncoordinated child cannot free climb 50 feet up a sheer trunk without professional arbor gear.
Right.
A bear does not carry its prey 50 feet into the high branches. A mountain lion might drag a kill into a low crotch of a tree, sure, but not to the high canopy.
So what did it?
The sheer kinetic force required to elevate that mass implies the existence of an apex predator, or some localized gravitational force that completely defies known zoological categorization.
And the impossible things they find aren't always tragic. Sometimes they're miracles. But a miracle that violates the laws of physics is just as terrifying as a monster. Consider the Arkansas boulder baby.
This is a profound study in geographic impossibility.
Walk us through it.
The event occurs in 2005, deep within Devil's Den State Park in Arkansas. It is early December. The temperature has plummeted well below freezing.
Brutal conditions.
A frantic local couple contacts authorities reporting that their 1-year-old infant has vanished from a ground floor crib. The bedroom window is wide open, and the father discovers barefoot tracks leading directly away from the house, pointing straight into the dense freezing darkness of the state park.
A solo ranger gets the call and immediately heads out into the timber, bracing his mind for a horrific recovery mission, right? Because an infant in below freezing temperatures has a survival window measured in minutes, not hours.
It's a race against the clock.
So 3 hours into tracking through the deep woods, his flashlight cutting through the freezing fog, he's as exhausted. Suddenly, he hears a faint, rhythmic crying.
He found him.
He scrambles up a steep embankment, breaks through the brush, and enters a clearing dominated by a massive, monolithic boulder. It is a sheer rock face, easily 15 feet high, with a completely flat top.
And where's the crying coming from?
The acoustic source of the crying is localized to the absolute center of the boulder's flat peak. The ranger, a fully grown man in peak physical condition wearing specialized climbing boots, later documents that it requires 90 seconds of grueling, exhausting effort, utilizing microscopic handholds and risking a bone-breaking fall just to scale the sheer face of this rock.
Wow.
When his muscles finally haul his torso over the edge, his flashlight illuminates the baby.
And here is where the logic of the universe totally fractures.
Exactly.
The infant is perfectly fine. His core temperature is stable. He is calmly swaddled in a light blue knit blanket. The ranger frantically checks the baby for trauma, but there isn't a single scratch on his skin.
How is that possible?
There isn't a speck of dirt, leaf litter, or frost on the blanket. He is perfectly, immaculately clean.
The ranger is forced to confront an impossible mathematical equation. Consider the logistics required to execute this scenario.
It doesn't add up.
Who, or what, takes a baby in the dead of winter, carries that child 3 hours deep into a pitch-black, freezing forest without a flashlight, scales a 15-foot sheer granite boulder without getting a single microscopic speck of dirt or mud on the child, gently deposits the infant in the center, and departs without leaving a single footprint, scuff mark, or broken branch at the base of the rock.
It's inexplicable. And to compound the absolute absurdity of the event, when the ranger returns the child to the hysterical parents, they are utterly confused by the blanket.
They didn't recognize it.
No, they do not own a light blue knit blanket.
Did?
The child was meticulously swaddled and insulated by whatever entity extracted him.
I want you to really project yourself into the boots of that Arkansas ranger. You are standing on a freezing rock, miles from civilization in the pitch dark. You have just recovered a perfectly clean, teleported baby wrapped in an alien artifact. The physics of the world have failed. Your entire understanding of cause and effect is broken.
Your mind is shattered.
At that exact highly vulnerable moment, if you panned your flashlight across the clearing and illuminated a fully carpeted staircase leading to nowhere, wouldn't you just accept it? Wouldn't your exhausted brain simply say, yep, that makes exactly as much sense as everything else going on out here?
It creates an environment of total cognitive surrender. When the human mind is regularly, violently exposed to the inexplicable, the threshold for what it considers impossible drops significantly.
It has to, just to survive.
It builds a tolerance for the absurd. And this trauma isn't just spatial or logistical. It is intensely visual. We have numerous accounts of rangers encountering biological entities that look like they crawled directly out of indigenous folklore.
Now, before you write this next account off as pure fantasy, consider the profound effects of sensory deprivation, physical exhaustion, and the isolation of the woods. Let's talk about Cal from the Adirondacks.
Cal's story is intense.
Cal was not a susceptible rookie. He was a hardened 18-year veteran police officer who had worked the brutal streets of Atlantic City. He retired, looking for a quiet pension gig, and leveraged his law enforcement background to secure a ranger position in the Adirondack Park, a staggering 6 million acre expanse of unyielding wilderness in New York.
A massive area.
The veteran he is replacing, a grizzled old-timer named Joe, sits Cal down on his first day and asks him a very simple point-and question. Do you believe in God?
That's a hell of an orientation.
Right. Cal answers affirmatively, And Joe replies with a chilling lack of irony that he isn't entirely sure about God's presence, but he's absolutely certain about the devil because he shares a ZIP code with him in these woods.
Just terrifying.
Cal, relying on his urban police logic, dismisses the warning as standard rookie hazing. But a month later, that logic is tested. Cal is deployed on a night search for a missing little girl near a heavily wooded sector called Grindstone Creek.
So he's out there in the dark.
The search party spreads out. Cal separates from the main group to cover more ground, methodically sweeping the heavy beam of his flashlight over the dense brush. The beam catches a flash of pink fabric. His heart leaps. He thinks he's found her jacket.
He thinks it's a rescue.
He rushes over, but as he pans his light up to assess her condition, the horrific reality sets in. He hasn't found the girl. He has only found her arm. The rest of her remains are violently scattered across the brush.
Oh, that is horrific.
And as his brain is trying to process this unimaginable, grisly scene, the absolute silence of the woods is broken by a sound. A strange, wet, cooing, hooting noise from the darkness ahead.
What does he do?
Operating purely on police training, he directs his heavy mag light toward the acoustic source, and the beam illuminates a biological entity that shatters his mind. He describes an upright, bipedal beast standing easily 7 feet tall.
Like a monster.
It is terribly, sickly emaciated, with its ribcage protruding sharply against rotting, gray, taut flesh. Its lower extremities terminate in hooves, but its forelimbs end in long, elongated hands tipped with filthy black talons.
But the anatomy of the head is what makes it a total nightmare.
Yeah, describe the head.
It doesn't possess a mammalian face. Its head is a massive, decaying buck skull, complete with an imposing 8-point antler rack. Its jaw is unhinged, filled with outward curving dagger-like teeth, and seated deep within the empty eye sockets of the skull are 2 glowing, demonic yellow eyes, staring directly at him.
And Cal doesn't freeze. He draws his service revolver and violently empties the entire cylinder, all 6 rounds into the darkness. The muzzle flash blinds him, the ringing deafens him, the creature vanishes into the brush, and Cal walks directly back to his vehicle, resigns his position that exact night, and never sets foot in a forest again.
When you juxtapose Cal's encounter with the folklore of the Wendigo, or even just the psychological phenomena of pareidolia, where a stressed brain forces shadows and maybe a starving bear to look like a monster, you begin to see the woods as a highly volatile, almost hallucinogenic environment.
It's like a pressure cooker for your mind.
Add in stories like the Ghost Ranger from the Philippines, who spends an afternoon playfully throwing rocks with his cousin Brandon near a cliff, only to return to base and learn Brandon had died in a car crash the day prior. The wilderness becomes a place where the veil separating reality, trauma, and nightmare is incredibly thin.
But when your brain is already fractured by the vastness of the woods, it desperately tries to categorize the unknown. So when a hiker stumbles upon something impossible, like a carpeted staircase, their exhausted brain instantly assumes portal or alien trap.
It jumps to the supernatural.
But the truth of what they're actually looking at is often much more grounded in reality, though just as forgotten. We promise to separate fact from fiction today, and the physical architecture of these stairs often has a remarkably concrete, utterly non-supernatural explanation.
Yes, if we temporarily step away from the panic-induced mythology and analyze the actual archaeology of these spaces, we must acknowledge the historical reality of structural ruins.
Right.
The modern cultural fascination with ruin porn, the aesthetic appreciation of decaying human infrastructure, is highly relevant here. The simple, inescapable truth of physics, chemistry, and human construction is that different building materials decay at vastly different chronometric rates.
Think about the mechanics of building a homestead. If you trek out and build a cabin deep in the wilderness in the year 1900, you are going to use local timber for the walls, the floorboards, and the roof.
Naturally.
But if you want a sturdy foundation or a grand, impressive entrance, you construct it using durable materials. Cut stone, poured concrete, or forged wrought iron. Fast forward 100 years to the present day. The wooden components have entirely succumbed to the biological realities of the forest. Termites, constant moisture, fungal rot, and heavy snowfall have obliterated the timber.
It's just gone.
The cabin doesn't just fall down, it is literally digested and absorbed back into the forest floor. But the stone, the iron, they remain largely untouched.
What you're left with is the most structurally durable component of the architecture, standing completely alone in a heavily overgrown, reclaimed environment.
Looking totally out of place.
Exactly. The stairs look entirely out of place, almost offensive to the eye, simply because the necessary context, the massive house they were once attached to, has been methodically erased by the passage of time.
The ultimate perfect physical embodiment of this concept is Madame Sherry's castle. This is not a Reddit story. This is a real geographical location you can visit today in the dense woods of Chesterfield, New Hampshire.
To understand those stairs, you really have to understand the woman.
Right. Madame Antoinette Sherry was a glamorous, eccentric, highly theatrical Parisian music hall singer and costume designer in the 1920s. She had an influx of wealth, impeccable style, and a desire for isolation.
So she built a castle.
Essentially. She funded the construction of this lavish, rustic French chateau deep in the unforgiving New Hampshire woods, primarily to host wild, scandalous, roaring 20s parties for her New York elite friends.
She essentially terraformed a section of the wilderness just to build a playground.
Yeah, but economic fortunes are notoriously fickle. She eventually fell into severe poverty, the massive chateau was abandoned to the elements, and in 1962 a catastrophic fire swept through the property, burning the entire sprawling wooden structure completely to the ground.
But the stairs survived.
However, the grand entrance, a sweeping, magnificent, curving stone staircase, complete with ornate Roman arches, survived the inferno intact.
So imagine the scenario today. You are a hiker traversing the Chesterfield woods. You don't know the local zoning history of a 1920s Parisian socialite.
Why would you?
You push through a thick wall of pine trees, and suddenly you are confronted with a literal, sweeping staircase to nowhere. It legitimately looks like a fantastical portal dropped from another dimension.
But it's not an anomaly. It's just the fireproof bones of a really incredible century-old party.
Exactly. And this phenomenon of historical amnesia extends drastically further back into human history in the 1920s.
Tell me about Bomarzo.
Consider the archaeological marvel of the Etruscan pyramid of Bomarzo, located deep within the dense woodlands of Viterbo, Italy. This is a colossal, megalithic stone structure believed by historians to have been constructed in the 7th century BC, or perhaps even earlier by pre-Etruscan civilizations.
Ancient stuff.
Very ancient. Hidden deep beneath the canopy, you find an altar accessible only by a steep, treacherous set of stairs carved directly into the living bedrock.
And the historical context of those stairs is brutally dark. Scholars heavily theorize that the Etruscan priests utilized these specific stairs to ascend to the top platform to perform augury sky-based divinations where they read the flight patterns of birds.
And something else, too.
Yeah, and to execute ritualistic blood sacrifices, utilizing both animals and, occasionally, human captives. So if a modern backpacker stumbles upon this moss-covered megalith and reports on a forum, "I found these ancient stairs in Italy and they exuded a dark, heavy, terrifying energy," well, they aren't entirely wrong.
They're picking up on something real.
Centuries of violent blood ritual saturated that stone, but the origin is deeply human history, not an extraterrestrial drop point.
We see the exact same pattern of jungle reclamation on an even larger scale in Asia. Look at the mysterious 2,000-foot-long staircase located on Phunankulin Mountain in Cambodia.
2,000 feet long.
Yes. This is an enormous, highly complex stone staircase, completely swallowed by the suffocating jungle, dating back to the height of the Khmer Empire, between the 9th and 13th centuries.
What was it for?
Modern archaeologists hotly debate its original function, whether it served as a grand processional pathway to a now-vanished ancient city, or merely a utilitarian route for thousands of laborers hauling massive stone blocks from local quarries to construct the iconic temples of Angkor Wat.
It perfectly mirrors the concept of finding a dinosaur bone before humanity had formulated the scientific concept of dinosaurs.
That's a great comparison.
Imagine being a peasant farmer in the 14th century and digging up a massive, terrifying, 5-foot-long skull with serrated teeth. You naturally, logically assume it's a dragon. It is the only conceptual framework your society possesses.
You work with what you know.
Today, a hiker stumbles onto Madame Sherry's stairs, or the mossy concrete ruins of an old 1800s logging camp. Because their memory of local municipal history is incredibly short, their brain seeks an explanation, and the internet fills in the gaps with the supernatural. They assume it's a portal.
Human memory is incredibly localized and surprisingly brief. We routinely forget the massive infrastructure our own ancestors built and abandoned just 3 or 4 generations ago.
That's true.
When the relentless force of nature reclaims the landscape, we view our own forgotten architecture as fundamentally alien.
Okay, but we have to address the massive elephant in the room. Let's really analyze the mechanics of the myth here.
Okay, let's do it.
If there are perfectly logical, historical, and architectural explanations for why random stone and iron stairs exist in the woods, Where did the modern mythology of severed hands, teleporting CDC staircases, aggressive guard dogs, and 5 years of missing time actually come from?
How did it escalate?
How did society travel from finding old stone ruins to if you step on the suburban carpet, you instantly die of a vascular aneurysm?
To map that transition, we have to meticulously examine the creepypasta effect and the profound illusion of truth engineered by the internet.
Yes, exactly.
We have to deconstruct exactly how digital algorithms manufacture this modern mythology from scratch and explore the deep psychological reasons why millions of rational adults desperately want to believe it.
We need to define the architecture of a creepypasta for anyone unfamiliar. It is a digital portmanteau of the words creepy and copy-paste. It refers to horror-related legends or images that are copied and pasted across internet forums, rapidly mutating and spreading like a digital virus.
And it spreads so fast.
Let's go back to that original Reddit post from August 2015, the Search and Rescue Woods post. The vital context that everyone conveniently strips away when they share this story on a TikTok video with spooky music is the specific location where that story was published.
It wasn't on a news site.
It was not posted on a verified news forum. It was not leaked on an official U.S. Forest Service message board.
Where was it?
It was published in a highly specific subreddit community called No Sleep. For the listener who might not be deeply embedded in Reddit culture, No Sleep is a forum explicitly entirely dedicated to the publication of original fictional horror writing.
That's the key right there.
But what makes the forum unique is its primary community rule. Users must roleplay in the comment section as if the stories are 100% verified objective truth. You are not allowed to break character and compliment the author's prose. It is a massive, collaborative, creative writing exercise built entirely on the willing suspension of disbelief.
It's the digital equivalent of telling campfire ghost stories.
Exactly. The author, who is incredibly talented, by the way, wrote a beautifully crafted, highly effective 7-part fictional horror series. The pacing was perfect, the tone was deadpan and bureaucratic, and it was so well executed that it literally broke containment.
People started believing it outside the forum.
People screen grabbed the text, deliberately cropped out the No Sleep banner, and pasted the raw text onto Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, presenting it as a leaked, verified confession from a real whistleblowing ranger.
And this viral phenomenon has drawn the ire of high-profile, serious investigators. David Paulides is a crucial voice here.
Oh, the missing 411 guy.
Yes. He is a former police officer and the author of the massive Missing 411 book series. He has dedicated years of his life to meticulously documenting real, baffling, and unexplained disappearances in national parks using Freedom of Information Act requests.
He takes this very seriously.
Extremely. So when his followers continuously bombarded him with questions about the stairs in the woods, Paulides publicly and aggressively addressed the mystery.
What did he say?
He unequivocally labeled the entire phenomenon a complete and utter farce. He pointed out the total lack of verifiable GPS coordinates, the absence of official SAR documentation, and categorized it as heavily sensationalized creepypasta that distracts from real missing persons cases.
And then you look at the proof photos. This is where the mechanics of the internet truly expose themselves.
Oh, photos are wild.
If you Google this phenomenon, the most famous photograph that constantly circulates as proof, the image showing a perfectly clean, modern wooden staircase constructed beautifully and sitting mysteriously in a lush green forest, it isn't a historical ruin, it isn't a glitch, it is literally a modern art sculpture.
Yes, context is the ultimate casualty of the algorithm.
Right.
That specific photograph captures a physical art installation located in Coleford in the United Kingdom, specifically situated in the Forest of Dean, which is one of Britain's oldest surviving woodlands.
So it's an art project.
The local council commissioned various artists to populate the forest trail with lifelike sculptures and modern art pieces. One artist built a deliberate conceptual staircase to nowhere.
And the internet just ran with it.
The internet, operating as a machine perfectly designed to strip away nuance and context to maximize engagement, took an image of an English art project and repurposed it as evidence of an American interdimensional portal.
Which perfectly explains the YouTube investigations. Look at YouTuber Nick Crowley. His video expedition into the woods is honestly a masterclass in the mechanics of psychological priming.
How so?
Nick decides he wants to physically locate these paranormal stairs. He hikes deep into the woods right at dusk. Now, consider his mental state. He is already deeply primed by the internet to be terrified. His brain is actively running background processes, searching for cult rituals, dimensional anomalies, and invisible predators.
Because his sympathetic nervous system is highly activated and scanning for threats based entirely on a fictional preloaded narrative, his physical perception of objective reality becomes severely distorted.
It totally warps his vision. At one point during the video, his flashlight catches a crumpled, dirty piece of blue plastic tarp tangled in the brush. His immediate vocalized reaction, driven by pure adrenaline, is that he's just discovered a human corpse wrapped in a bag.
He really believes it in that moment.
He is legitimately, visibly terrified. He approaches it, pokes it with a stick, and his brain slowly registers that it is merely discarded garbage.
Just a tarp.
Just a few minutes later, the exact same cycle repeats. He sees a strange shape in the dark, panics, assumes it's an occult artifact or a monster waiting to ambush him. He bravely creeps closer, only to realize he is having a standoff with an abandoned, moldy boat seat cushion.
Okay.
He walked into that forest actively seeking the paranormal, and his brain weaponized a piece of trash and a seat cushion against his own nervous system.
Crowley's experience perfectly illustrates how cognitive expectation dictates physical perception.
It really does.
If you walk into a dense forest, inherently believing that encountering a staircase will induce a feeling of overwhelming dread and vertigo, and you happen to stumble upon the mundane stone ruins of an 1800s cellar, your sympathetic nervous system will fulfill that prophecy.
It makes it real for your body.
It will instantly flood your bloodstream with cortisol and adrenaline.
Yeah.
Your heart rate will spike, causing localized dizziness. You will feel a profound sense of dread. The physical symptoms you are experiencing are 100% real and measurable, but the trigger is entirely psychosomatic. The monster isn't the stairs. The monster is your own neurochemistry.
I think the absolute best metaphor for this entire phenomenon comes from the world of mathematics. Let's talk about Kokichi Sugihara.
Oh, the illusionist.
Yeah. He is a brilliant Japanese mathematician who specializes in creating these mind-bending, physically impossible 3D optical illusions. One of his most famous creations is based on the Schroeder stairs concept.
Yes, the 3D printed infinite staircase. It is a brilliant manipulation of perspective.
Exactly. Wait, let's actually look at how that works. When you set Sugihara's 3D printed stairs on a table and look at them from one specific highly fixed camera angle, your brain interprets the visual data as an impossible infinite loop.
Like an M.C. Escher drawing.
Exactly. Like an Escher drawing brought to life. A staircase that violates every known law of physics and geometry. But the second you walk around the table, the second you physically change your perspective and look at the object from the side, the illusion instantly shatters.
The trick is revealed.
You realize the object isn't an impossible staircase at all. It is just a flat, cleverly angled, highly distorted piece of plastic that exploits the brain's reliance on right angles. The internet mythology of the stairs works the exact same way.
That is a brilliant way to put it.
The algorithm took a 2D piece of information, a brilliant work of fictional horror on Reddit, and it angled it so perfectly and distributed it so widely that it created an impossible 3D reality in the minds of millions of people who refuse to change their camera angle.
It is the ultimate digital illusion. We are collectively staring at the Schroeder stairs, actively refusing to step to the side to see the plastic.
We want the magic to be real.
The internet functions as an incredibly efficient illusion machine, taking entirely disparate, unrelated data points, a fictional horror story, a decontextualized photograph of an English art sculpture, the genuine historical ruins of a burned-down 1920s French chateau, and synthesizing them through the pressure cooker of social media into a monolithic, terrifying, global myth.
The irony here is thick enough to cut with a knife. We launched this deep dive looking for the ultimate horror. We were searching for alien abduction portals, temporal anomalies, and demonic booby traps hiding in the brush.
And what did we find?
We ended up discovering that the most powerful reality-bending force in the deep woods isn't a cursed staircase. It's human imagination, highly accelerated and weaponized by an internet algorithm.
The landscape we have traversed over the past hour is incredibly revealing regarding human nature. We initiated this analysis by defining the structural parameters of the modern myth, born directly from a brilliant, highly infectious piece of Reddit fiction. We systematically explored the visceral, terrifying campfire tales of real rangers facing impossible horrors, from the staggering 5-year temporal displacement of Ranger Torque in the Philippines to the indestructible, supposedly teleporting timber of the 1940 CDC incident, to the gruesome accounts of surgically severed hands and phantom touches in the Swedish deep woods.
We widen the aperture to look at the broader, very real trauma of the wilderness, the heartbreaking statistical reality of the hundreds of thousands of missing persons cases, the Arkansas boulder baby entirely defying the laws of thermodynamics and physics.
And Cal's buck-skulled nightmare.
Exactly, Cal's horrific encounter in the Adirondacks. When you understand the psychological toll of that isolation, it is incredibly easy to see why the operatives who patrol the absolute edge of the unknown are willing to believe that the impossible is sitting right there in the clearing.
And crucially, we grounded that terror in the physical reality of architectural decay. We explored the mechanics of how human memory fails us on a societal level, transforming the glamorous, fire-scarred ruins of Madame Sherry's 1920s party chateau and the ancient, blood-soaked altars of the Etruscans into supernatural portals simply because we forgot we built them.
We just forgot.
Finally, we deconstructed the mechanics of the modern internet myth-making machine, demonstrating precisely how easily context can be stripped away to turn a benign art project in the UK into a global psychosomatic viral panic.
So as we finally prepare to pack up our gear and hike out of this deep dive, I want you to spend some time thinking about your own internal mental architecture.
I want you, the listener, to actively interrogate your own beliefs. What are your personal mental staircases?
Well, that's a great question.
What impossible concepts, modern myths, or deeply held assumptions do you firmly believe to be objective truth simply because the necessary context was quietly removed? Or because the story was presented to you convincingly enough from one highly specific fixed angle? How often does your brain panic and turn a dirty tarp in the woods into a monster?
That is the perfect psychological mirror to hold up. And I will leave you with one final, lingering thought to chew on as you go about the rest of your day.
Leave them with something good.
We have just spent an hour systematically proving that a completely fictional, collaborative internet story written in 2015 can actively cause modern, rational, GPS-equipped hikers to experience genuine, measurable physical symptoms of dread, dizziness, and panic when they stumble across a mundane set of old stone steps.
It creates physical symptoms.
The belief literally manufactures a physical reality in the body. If a simple ghost story from a decade ago possesses the power to do that to us today, what ancient primal fears, what deeply held societal superstitions, and what historical curses that have dictated human behavior and law for millennia were originally just a fictional story told by someone sitting around a campfire who just wanted to entertain their friends.
The truly profound and terrifying reevaluation of human history.
Keep your eyes open out there, question your angles, and maybe, just to be safe, stick to the marked trails.